Edifice of Trust podcast. The Edifice of Trust podcast is a thoughtful discussion of today's current events from the perspective of America's founding principles. Welcome. From heart-pumping music to brain-thumping commentary, I call this episode The Reason for Reason. And my blog post features a photo of Rodin's The Thinker. The United States is a unique country, but not for the reasons that you might think. Most countries are based on a mixture of ethnicity, language, and religion. Some are confined to unnatural borders imposed by the former colonial masters, which makes absolutely no sense and has caused no end of problems. But America is based on a philosophy, specifically the Enlightenment philosophy elaborated by John Locke and other Enlightenment philosophers. The Founding Fathers created a new republic based on Enlightenment philosophy and drafted a constitution to define how the republic would operate and also define the relationship between the government and its citizens. This new republic would be based on reason, and while reasonable people can disagree, civil discourse should be able to reach a consensus to guide the operation of the nation. The founders were opposed to faction and were appalled to watch the new nation almost immediately fall into bitter and vicious factionalism, except, of course, for those founders that secretly led the different factions. And the vote, which initially was restricted to the landed and supposedly rational elite, quickly spread to the unlanded and supposedly less rational hoi polloi. So America, founded on philosophy and reason, has been at the mercy of raw emotion ever since its founding. I blame Kahneman. Professor Daniel Kahneman and his colleague Amos Tversky, both psychologists, developed a theory on judgment and risk-taking that was transformed into what we now call behavioral economics. This theory became widely known when he published his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, in 2011. Kahneman asserts that humans have two types of thinking, fast and slow, hence the title. Fast thinking is instinctual. Primitive man could not take the time to calculate if the sound he heard was a life-threatening danger or something benign. He has to react, and fast. He didn't have time to weigh the evidence or find new facts. He had to jump to conclusions, even if they were sometimes wrong. But thinking fast would have not put primitive man on the road to civilization. He needed time and patience to chip a rock into a tool. Slow thinking is rational. It took the ancient philosophers a great deal of time cogitating the world around them to develop their theories of man and his place in the universe. And it took a great deal of time for John Locke and others to develop the concepts that became the Enlightenment that are the foundation for American democracy. Democracy thrives on reason, not instinct. Athenian democracy was prey to demagogues. The Roman Republic fell sway to powerful generals and ultimately to an emperor. The American Republic has lasted 229 years, and it has not always acted rationally, and it sometimes has enacted some irrational policies. But at the core, there were enough rational people to hold this country together and to continue this great experiment in democracy. We appear to be living in an era where instinctual behavior and irrational thinking run rampant, and many fear that our great experiment in democracy will consume itself, as President Adams predicted. President Trump's appeals to his deplorables and the progressive left's identity politics are geared to generating tribal passions over rational thought. Keep in mind also that the philosophical basis for progressivism is not the Enlightenment, but Marxist communism. One would think that we could turn to academia for some rational thinking, but the only people on campus that are thinking rationally now are foreign students studying science, technology, engineering, and math. Meanwhile, our native-born students cower in their safe zones where they are unable to discern the difference between hate speech and civil discussion. So where does that leave us? It seems we need crises to force us to employ our better nature. The Civil War liberated an entire people from slavery. The Great Depression and World War II created the greatest generation. But at this point in the 21st century, we face no crisis except for one of our own making. The economy is good, and most people that want to work can find a job. Despite government meddling, our health care is acceptable, and our greatest health care problems, which are rising obesity and diabetes, are due to poor lifestyle choices and not a failing healthcare system. Immigration is a challenge, but the throngs of people trying to get into our country remind us that America is still a better place to be than anywhere else on earth. There are pockets of rational thinking still in our country, and I hope that the Edifice of Trust website, blogs, and podcasts can be counted as one of those bright spots. So I shouldn't blame Kahneman. I should thank him. His analogy of thinking fast and slow provides great insight into human nature and why we do what we do. But as we learn more about how the mind functions, we must be cautious about empowering the government even further, because government can use this knowledge to control us even more and crush our liberties, as is happening now in China and elsewhere in the world. The Constitution was written and ratified to, quote, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Our self-absorbed drift into populism, either right or left, is a betrayal of that legacy. Don't get mad. Control your passion. Activate your frontal lobes. You need to be part of the voice of reason. Thank you. Don't forget, my latest book, 2017, A Trumpian Year in Review, is now available in paperback and ebook versions on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iBooks. Also available are my previous publications, Principled Policy and Edifice of Trust. And if you want some adventure, try my novel, Tawantinsuyu. More information on these books, plus links to retail outlets, is available on my website, www.edificeoftrust.com. Thank you. Welcome back. The lack of rational discussion in the political sphere is enough to drive a person to despair. The Democratic progressives want to transform a relatively successful economic system into a socialist paradise that historically produced nothing but misery. The alt-right wants to create an all-white safe zone protected by high walls and high tariffs. The goals of these factions are not only unattainable, they are illogical. These positions are chosen by passion and emotion, not by reason. But that does not mean we should ignore their complaints. There are problems in America that need fixing, and these groups are good at pointing them out. It is just that their solutions won't work. The opposing factions don't recognize the other group's complaints as valid. We seem to be on the road to fascism, communism, or chaos. Only reason can deliver us from this fate. Thank you. Thanks for listening to my podcast. If you would like to hear more Edifice of Trust podcasts, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.